Good morning and welcome to the Leadership and Insurance Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by Rotem, who's CEO and founder of @Bay. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing well, Alex. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. And thank you for persevering. We've been trying to do this one for a little while. So I think we were supposed to do it when I was in ITI and I was going to run back to my hotel room for doing it. So I was actually quite pleased.
That's right. Yeah. All good things happen to those who wait, right?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And look, @Bay is a business. The reason that we've been so persistent in trying to get it on, we watch from afar. We love a lot of what we hear. We're really excited about what you guys do. But just in case anyone's listening in isn't aware of @Bay and the business, it'd be great if you could do an intro to what it is that you guys do there.
Yeah, sure. So, @Bay is building, we're building the cyber insurance company of the future, or that's what we hope to do. We are a cyber insurance MGA operating in working with our wholesale partners. What's unique about @Bay, in my mind, is that we came to this problem from the security side, and my background is in security. I spent most of my career in security. Started in the Israeli intelligence technology unit, where I was a captain there for about 5 years. I'm an engineer by training. And I found about 8 years ago, I find myself working with the insurance industry on cyber insurance. And granted, cyber insurance in 2014 looked very different than it does today, but a lot of the principles remain the same. And what I found was that there's a real big disparity between the dynamic nature of cyber risk and the kind of traditional underwriting machine of P&C. So, and just to be kind of very concrete about it, I think the smaller gap that I found that is still meaningful is that there's a lot of technical data that can be acquired and leveraged to underwrite. And really what it is that there are some companies who have holes in their security that are so big and so easy to find, it's a miracle they haven't been breached yet. And by forcing what we call a non-intrusive penetration test or a scan on each one of those customers, we can stay away from the bottom 5%. And really that's kind of half the magic in insurance sometimes, is if you can just stay away from the worst 5%. But by the way, it's not just staying away from them, it's being able to tell them what it is that makes them so bad. I mean, they probably want to know, right? An underwriting exercise is also a really good external objective third-party assessment of your risk. And if somebody tells you they are not willing under any condition to sell you insurance, that is a red flag that you should take into consideration, right? So actually working with them, explaining what we found, helping them fix it, and then happily providing them insurance if they did is kind of the first step. But the big issue, the big gap that we found was that it doesn't matter how good you are at underwriting. The problem remains that insurance is a year-long contract and you cannot change the terms for a full year. So whatever price you set needs to reflect the risk for the next 12 months. Now, the problem with cyber risk is that it changes quickly, and most times it is not your fault as a company that your risk has changed. It's not anything you've done. So you could be a great company with great security. You're really on top of your stuff. Now there's a new critical vulnerability in a Microsoft Exchange server, or in an Apache Strut server, or in whatever. You have dozens, if not hundreds, of technologies in your stack. One of them is going to have an issue. That issue makes you one of the bottom 5%. Now, you haven't done anything wrong, but you are now at terrible danger. And I can't know ahead of time who in my portfolio it's going to be, because I don't know which one of the hundreds of technologies in your stack is going to be the one that has the critical vulnerability. It's just so dynamic and so much all over the place. And once there's a new critical vulnerability, the time it takes attackers to exploit it is days, days or weeks tops. And so it's just not enough time to change your underwriting and kind of realign your book by just underwriting once a year. You just can't wait to the end of the year. And so really what @Bay does that is unique is that we actively monitor the security of every company in our portfolio throughout the year. And whenever we see that you now have an issue that would have caused us to stay away from you because you were too risky, we have a security team that reaches out and helps you fix the issue. And by doing that, we've been able to lower the amount of ransomware in our book by more than 5 times compared to the average in the industry. And that's really important because ransomware is the biggest attack vector in our industry. It's more than 60% of all losses. And so by having 5 times less ransomware, we were able to have loss ratios that are just dramatically lower from the rest of the industry. And then using that to maintain appetite and good pricing kind of throughout this kind of hardening market. But the other thing that I'll say, which is kind of just really important, is that because of all our data collection is automatic, we've automated the decision making as well. And so really, not only is it a more granular kind of underwriting assessment and an ongoing monitoring throughout the year, we also make a decision in 30 seconds. Really, we took out the human from the middle of the decision making. Again, this is true for SMBs. It's not true for the largest risks out there. But for an SMB risk, we made it so the broker is actually getting better service, faster, faster quoting at a much higher quote ratio, and a much higher kind of win rate. And we're getting kind of more underwriting data and a better way of doing it. So it kind of feels like a win-win, and that was the engine that kind of helped fuel our growth over the last few years.
I think it's so interesting when you're looking at such a dynamic risk, and it's something that there isn't necessarily any parallel to that. The speed of change. I was thinking about this. I've obviously got my own small business, and that's there's an exposure there. I definitely bury my head in the sand about it, which I think is a problem for a lot of small business owners. But the equivalent being that you've got a house and someone's putting holes in it, but if you can't see the holes, then you're not going to fill them up. And that relationship, I think, you guys felt like the start of a trend towards that sort of proactive relationship between the insurer and the insured. And we're starting to see that trend happen in different classes of businesses as well. Does it surprise you, as someone that came from cybersecurity industry first and then came into the insurance industry, how much insurance is being offered without this kind of level of understanding, continuous assessment of risk?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things about insurance that weren't natural for me when I started. Maybe the strangest thing about insurance is that this is a product that you sell first and you learn how much it costs you a year later, which is not how you typically would like to price a product. You would like to know that how much money you're going to be making before you offer it. It's that there's a built-in lag between where the actual risk and the actual price is and your actions, right? You're only going to discover it after the fact, and you're always kind of chasing where true risk is at. I think another part that surprised me was that how much of this business was just moving around data and not really making decisions. So underwriters at their best are, these amazing kind of risk managers who can be really thoughtful and can really help guide and partner with a broker and a company to not only help them kind of discover what is their risk, but then also tailor the right coverage for them. But in SMB mid-market, a lot of what they were first doing is just copying and pasting data from one form to another, from one system to another, from one PDF to a system, doing a lot of manual, back office, middle office work that is not inspiring and not really that useful for them. Also not exciting. Insurance is very, there are a lot of companies out there. Each one developed their own IT systems, and most IT systems are 20, 30, 40 years old. And it's just very clunky. The whole thing just feels very, very clunky. And one of the benefits of starting a company in 2017 was that we were able to build our technology stack from scratch, and we designed a company where engineers are in every part of the organization and are and have a major kind of presence in the leadership team. Myself, I have an engineering background. We have a CTO in our executive team, and we made sure that technology is front and center. And so you end up just taking away a ton of the stuff that is just, I don't know, not inspiring, and you empower underwriters to really make a difference. And that this ends up actually serving you and serving your customers, because you can provide just much better service. Our underwriters aren't busy in just entering data into systems for compliance reasons. The whole thing just happens on its own, and so they get to just spend time with the broker and with the customer. So yeah,
just to dive in. So I was going to say, like, you've automated so much. What role does the underwriter play, and what's the kind of what's the kind of like ratio? Because everyone would be very underwriting talent heavy in their businesses, but you're essentially doing that kind of almost the thing that happened in banking, that for every investment banker you lost as a bank, you got 10 engineers.
Right.
What's the sort of ratio? What role do they play now?
So, if the way I think about, the vision for the work of the underwriter, I would definitely split it between the large, complex and risks and the smaller risks. When it comes to complex risks, it definitely, I think that the way the industry has been dealing with those risks is actually really good. What we really want to do is just enhance what already exists with just better data, more insights, and perhaps add in-house security expertise into the conversation, so that when we have a conversation with the customer and the broker, we have an insurance expert and a security expert in that conversation. But when it comes to SMB risks, what we found was that the underwriters, you don't have enough time and you can't make money if you spend days and weeks on an account. You have to, there's just a limited amount of time that folks can spend on them. And so really what it was until now was just mostly just, very basic categorizing. All right, what's your industry? What's your size? Just what's competition doing? Let me see, if I can be competitive here, just shoot it out. And you got like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get it out the door. Again, so we're trying to automate most of it and turn our underwriters to portfolio managers, where you work with your broker on a portfolio view of, okay, what is the sum total of your customers? What is the risk? What is the appetite? What are the things that they should be caring about? How can we kind of educate the portfolio? How can we put you guys in a better position? So instead of just moving around papers and drowning in administrative work, being able to kind of take a step back and have more strategic conversations with brokers about kind of how to manage their portfolio, appetite, risk, and how to just kind of empower the brokers to provide better advice and better coverage to their customers.
Is it fair to say as well that arguably that work, that SMB market in the cyberspace wasn't even particularly profitable without that automation, because the volume that you would require would just sort of negate any profitability, one would imagine?
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, the thing about insurance is that when the risks are very small, you can probably just do portfolio underwriting, meaning just give everybody the same price and not even do any underwriting, and just try to create an average price that makes sense. But when the risks get a little bit bigger, you can't afford to have a portfolio underwriting approach, and that's where we think this kind of breaks down. And for a lot of the other issue is that it's very non-standard, so it required kind of the wholesalers to do quite a bit of work to try and make sure they answer the right questions and do the things that the underwriters need to be able to process. So it definitely, I think it was not profitable, but also just very intensive, very cumbersome. The other part is that because cyber is new, a lot of brokers, there aren't many good brokers and good underwriters in cyber insurance yet. And so they just ended up having way too much work than they could handle. And I think that coming in with automation, and maybe when we launched in 2018, most SMBs were not buying cyber insurance yet, so it was manageable. But as more and more companies started to buy insurance, it was brokers start to gravitate more and more towards the automated solutions that we've offered, because there was just no other way for them to process all of their work.
And obviously it speaks to, my role is working in the recruitment sector. We're always talking about, people don't leave businesses because of money. They, fulfillment, furtherment of career, leaving managers. And it speaks to that kind of rewarding part of the job, like taking away that heavy administrative burden, workload, and getting into that relationship management. Presumably, it's difficult to say, but have you ever got feedback from people that joins your business from other businesses in that there's more enjoyment from that sort of relationship-driven approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, when folks come in, typically their first reaction is just to be blown away by just like how much more fun the process is. Even before you get to the actual work, like like we have some folks tell us stories that when they need to issue a binder, it takes their machine like 15 minutes to produce all the documents, and with that bay it takes 2 seconds. And just the idea that you could produce something and just have it immediately available, it feels almost like going from this very old phone where nothing just everything's like slow, and to this like new, you got this new phone, this new iPad. Oftentimes it feels like going from coach to business class. Like it just feels everything's just a lot easier. The amount of like, I don't know, just like the amount of manual labor that you need to do to just get your stuff done and get off your desk is just so much lower. That's more fun. And then the experience of having not only having a lot more data, but having a security expert join every one of your customer calls and providing technical support, being able to have a much more technical and a much deeper conversation about risk. The feedback we get from our underwriters is that this feels like such better service to their brokers. They feel like they're being elevated as professionals. They're learning a ton. So we've been lucky to be able to attract like really amazing people into our company, because they're like, I'm too young to be part of the industry that is just kind of, I don't know, staying left behind. I want to be where kind of it's cutting edge. And obviously being part of a fast growing company where everybody's asked to do more than they can to stretch their capabilities to grow. We're promoting from within. So a lot of our regional managers, our senior underwriters, these are all people that came in, worked their butt off, and just got further in their career a lot faster. They're managing books that are sometimes 10 times bigger than what they did in their old shop, and so it's just very, very exciting, dynamic environment. And obviously the fact that everybody's a part owner of the company, everybody has equity, being part of that journey, I think it's really cool. And then maybe last but not least, which is personally important for me, is that we also have, by building an insurance company from scratch in the 21st century, we also have a chance to build a company that looks more like the world we want and less like the world we came from. Sure. And so I'm talking specifically about diversity and inclusion. And at-Bay is 50% women from top to bottom, 50% of the leadership team. Half of all the kind of VPs and executives in the company, all the way down to the individual contributors. It's interesting. It started as a point of emphasis, but at some point it just became self-sustaining because amazing people saw a company that looked like the company they wanted to be part of and joined. And we've been incredibly empowered by just having access to better talent and then having that talent be kind of completely bought in and really excited about the culture and the environment, and they really see this as a place where they have a shot at getting as far as possible. So that stuff's been really important for me, and especially as you climb towards the executive levels. I mean, the amount of 50-year-old white men is just astounding, the numbers. And I hope we can, I'm not 50 yet, but I fall into most of those privileged categories. But I'm hopeful that that I can be part of this change and help build kind of an industry that looks a lot more like the world we want to see.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we've been doing some stuff at FinPro. We operate a Flight series, which is female leaders in insurance technology, and we're involved in as many DE&I initiatives as we can, mainly if nothing else to sort of learn. But one of the the most obvious and biggest takeaways is that we talk about the insurtech community a lot because you've got a lot of really early stage companies, and that's your opportunity to get it right. And then, as you found, is that if you get it right and you bring in, and it's about bringing in senior talent, it's putting people in positions of power. It's not saying, oh, we've got 50% men and women, for example, but the 50% that are women are all in like junior roles. You need to see leadership that's representative, and that's obviously then going beyond gender into all sorts of kind of different criteria about how people self-identify. People need to see businesses that look like them. And there's two sides of that. One is people coming into your business. And I've seen that a lot more in my role in the last kind of particularly 24, 36 months. People are not prepared to go and work for businesses where, if I'm talking to a talented woman, senior leader, trying to bring her into, it's a lot harder if I'm pointing and saying, do you want to join this business? And you go, who's the leadership team? And you go, these 8 40 to 50-year-old white guys. And exactly, I fall in that category as well. But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you get it right and people could look at your business, and if you're sort of an ambitious woman that you're looking at businesses to work for, if you can see that you're self-represented, then you're going to do that. But flipping on its head, I had a really good conversation. I mentioned this guy twice now, but I met BRZ Insurance at the ITI event, and their whole thing was, look, the Latinx people in America don't buy insurance because they're not represented in any of the kind of insurance marketing. Things are not Spanish language. They've got 2 service centers, one in Mexico, one in Brazil. Even their marketing is just representative of the 68 million Latino people that are in the US. And it's something I was obviously oblivious to. One, not being a Brit, and secondly, being all the privileges I could be and a white guy. And it was so inherently obvious when he pointed it out. It's like, yeah, you wouldn't want to buy insurance from people that don't represent you. So, yeah, hugely important and hugely interesting. Something I wanted to ask you: you come from an engineering background. There's lots of engineers in the business. You started the business, in 2017. Do you think you would change how much tech you built, and there might be more of a balance between buying and building now, because there is so much out there to support insurtech startup businesses?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, when we started, we were part of the first wave. So the first companies that, by the way, when early days, I was frustrated by, I did not believe that I could build an analytics company and that people would actually use what I built, because I thought that at the end of the day, the heart of an insurance company is underwriting. And it's the one, like making decisions making risk decisions is the one thing they will never outsource. And so I felt I had to build an insurance company to be able to actually kind of push the ceiling and leverage all of the expertise from security. But it felt like a very daunting experience. I mean, nobody was building insurance companies. It was very early. And I remember as we were kicking around this idea, Lemonade just came out of stealth, and the founders are also Israeli. And so, I connected with them. I was like, and they said, like, look, I mean, it's definitely complex, but, so is cybersecurity. So, you can, you seem like a smart guy, you can figure it out. And so I was like, well, I don't know if I can, but I know somebody who can. And that's when I called up my co-founder and said, like, you got to build an insurance company. And you start slowly. There was nothing. I mean, we were, even the idea of how to set up an MGA was for people who came from outside the industry. The resources, it wasn't clear where the resources even were, who to ask the question. So I think we if we were to launch this now, we would probably have saved, close to a year on development. We probably would not have had to develop a lot of the back office, that just even the back, even the companies that we did work with in the beginning have done so much work and are so much better today than they were 5 years ago, that 5 years ago we just couldn't use it. It wasn't good enough. Today it would have been good enough and we would have been able to use it. So yeah, I mean, 100%. It's just like, and I mean, this is following the exact same blueprint of fintech, where you're starting with a few trailblazers who make everybody else interested in the space, and then you're starting to see not only kind of consumer-facing companies, but a lot of infrastructure companies coming in and building the infrastructure, and just making it, lowering the barriers to enter. But I will say that the biggest barrier in insurance remains capital, and the ability to access capital in a good way. And that part, it's interesting. Every different stage of a company, the stuff that keeps you up at night is very different. When you just start, you have nothing, nothing. You're trying to come up with a product and a go-to-market strategy that makes sense. We call it product market fit. And so that's kind of where all of your concern. When we launched, our product initially did very poorly because not surprisingly, we knew nothing about what it took to sell insurance. And so, we fixed it. We got great feedback that it sucked, and then we fixed it, and then we got great feedback that it was working. So, and once you pass that stage, you're like, all right, somebody's willing to buy this. Then you realize, oh my God, I am not going to be able to actually sell a lot of these because I don't have any of the infrastructure. I'm just, everything is manual, everything is like not built. I just don't have the, even scaling from doing 100 scans a day to 10,000 scans a day. It's like that takes a lot of scaling of the business. And so that was kind of a key concern for us for a very long time. And then once you reach scale at a company, and AdBay today is, we're processing kind of hundreds of thousands of submissions in a year, maybe even more. I think we're issuing more than 1 million documents a month.
Wow.
And it's become a high scale business at this point. Then your concern kind of changes. Okay, where am I going to get the supply of capital to support my continued growth? And it's just an interesting journey.
Well, I wanted to sort of take a pause on, because I really want to dig into some of the challenges on the journey, and I think we touched on some really interesting ones there. But just to paint a picture of the AdBay business now today, what does it look like? Geographies you're focusing on, numbers of people, bits and pieces. Because where are you? Sort of Series B on the funding round? I think you've raised.
No, so we're a Series D company. We raised $300 million to date. Last valuation was $1.4 billion. That was about a year ago. Even though public markets are not doing very well, AdBay has grown almost, about 4.5 times. We're 4.5 times bigger than we were exactly a year ago when we signed the Series D. Wow. So we're still growing at a really fast clip. We're at about, I think in June we're going to pass about $340 million in premium run rate. We have about 220 people. We're adding 2,500 new customers a month to our book. Out of the 220 people, we have about 70 people that are pure R&D, data science, cybersecurity research, and then the rest of the organization is around, underwriting, claims management, finance, marketing, all that stuff. So that's kind of where we are. We're exclusively in the U.S. We work across the country in 5 we have 4 regional offices, and we have a bunch of people that are remote, and we're exclusive to the wholesale community, which is a thing that is a little bit different about AdBay and some of our other startup competitors. We're very loyal to our wholesale partners. they've been incredible partners to us, and so that's kind of the focus for us on the go-to-market side.
Yeah, brilliant. I think my brain had a meltdown there because I had the number and I was thinking that's the biggest Series B I've ever seen. And I knew you'd hit the magic unicorn status as well. I'm always interested if anyone has a unicorn party. But touching on some of the stuff you said, it's just I'm always this is just a personal question from a kind of point of view of I run a very small business, and but obviously we bootstrap everything. But when you're doing venture-backed businesses, does it ever get scary? Did you ever sort of stop and think these are pretty big numbers?
Oh my God. all the time.
Yeah.
I think look, when we first started, all we had was a PowerPoint deck, and it wasn't even like a really good one. And investors were like, here's $3.5 million, go try and build something. And I was like, that was scary because I was an executive before, and I managed people, and I had a budget that was bigger, but it was an established company, and it didn't feel like it felt when it was just there. We have nothing, and there's absolutely no guardrails. And I think that when we raise our series, then 3 million becomes 30 million, and 3 million become 300 million, and the numbers just become they feel insane. The revenue part, the scale of the business, the amount of people, like all of it. I think one thing about COVID, which is interesting, is that it masked a lot of the growth because you don't see all the people that joined the company, and you don't necessarily see the momentum the way that maybe we would have seen you don't feel it. We've just recently reopened our offices, and I travel to meet back teams, and suddenly you're surrounded with 70, 90, 100 people, and you're like, oh wow, this is like a big company now. And so yeah, it feels I personally I've been challenged and stretched more than any other time in my career. Every time you get comfortable, you immediately get uncomfortable again. The ambition is just really high across the board. The mission we're trying to build, and the exciting part is that I feel like sometimes you need to be in the right place at the right time, and I feel fortunate to have found myself in a place where it's just there's just a lot of really good momentum for the business, and so it's just been growing really, really fast. So there's almost no time to think about and reflect about what's going on. You just gotta always be in the moment and execute to your best. But yeah, it's I still go back and just the sheer scale of the numbers feels ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I'm glad though. I think if it didn't, then I think you'd be taking it serious enough.
Yeah, right? I'd be a psychopath if I didn't.
I've got a really good friend of mine called Rupert, who is a headhunter and he's a really good guy. And he went into investment banking before he worked in recruitment, and he basically came out and went into recruitment. He said, the day I get comfortable betting hundreds of millions of dollars of other people's money is that's never going to be me. And that's why he actually walked away from that industry, and it was just sort of talking about that pressure. And so I'm always intrigued, and funnily enough, for all the people I've had on the podcast, and we're sort of up to nearly 100 episodes now, I've never gone, what does it feel like to kind of put yourself on the line for that? Says I've got great respect for it, especially with a company growing so much. But it's a really interesting point you made about not being able to see the people. It's almost kind of hidden from you the scale of growth. Do you think?
But I will.
Sorry.
By the way, just one more smaller thing. I will say that the interesting journey for me was that when we started, there was an intellectual curiosity. I wanted to solve cyber risk. I wanted, I thought that there was a really important business to be built here, where we could help figure out risk and help guide customers. So a lot of and still to this day, from a mission perspective, my mission is around leveraging the position of the insurance company to really learn what matters about cyber risk, and then use what we learn to help standardize the industry, guide our customers, provide them with great risk transfer and great risk management. But the one thing that kind of surprised me in the journey is that as you start building it, you're no longer on your own. You now have, in the beginning, dozens, and then at this point, hundreds of people that join your journey, that wake up every day, every morning, and give everything they have to try and build this business together with you. And you become, in a way, responsible for their journey, for their outcomes, for their success. And at least personally for me, that has now become a much bigger and more important, driving force in my own journey, because there are so many people who are just doing amazing, incredible. They're not the founders of the company yet. They wake up every day as if they were the founders. It's their baby. They give, they poured their heart and soul into the business. And it's really important for me that they have, an amazing journey and an amazing outcome. And that's not something that I necessarily understood that was going to happen when we got started, but it's, at the end of the day, it's like numbers are numbers, but people that's the stuff that really matters. When you go to sleep, it's so, and that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. If I feel, that I'm not doing as good a job as I want to. So
no, I understand that. And there's been some really tough moments as well for other insurtechs out there at the moment. We've had to let people go, and it's the challenge between growing really aggressively and then, if the funding doesn't happen, then you're in a difficult spot. So yeah, it's a huge responsibility. I wanted to take it back to something you touched on. Firstly, I love the fact that you started with a bad PowerPoint slide, because I keep seeing some really snobby pitch competitions where they're like, no PowerPoint. And I'm like, if the idea is good enough, I don't care if it's written on a napkin. If you've got the right team and the right idea, then that should take precedence as to whether you know how to build really exciting pitch decks. I'm not saying they're not important, but that sort of stuff frustrates me. But taking it back, you touched on a few things. What did you get wrong at the start? I'm really intrigued about that. And then, was it right thesis, wrong application?
I can fill a full hour with the stuff we get wrong in the early days. But I will say one thing that was very surprising to me in the beginning was that I thought that if you could underwrite better, then it's obvious that you can translate that into a better product and win in the marketplace by being a better underwriter, by having better risk. And that is actually not true in insurance. So here's the thing about underwriting. So first of all, neither the broker nor the customer care about how much money you're going to make. If anything, they don't want you making a lot of money, because that means they got a bad deal, right? You want to make sure that your capital providers get a good return and a solid return, and that you're being responsible with their money. But as far as winning in the marketplace goes, you're trying to squeeze out the best coverage and price for a given kind of loss ratio target, right? And here's the problem with underwriting is that the more you know about a company, it doesn't necessarily translate into giving them a better rate, because at least half the times what you discover makes you like the company less, right? Yeah. So if you're coming in, so when we came in, we did all these scans, collected all this data, and at least half the times we were giving worse terms because of what we found, not necessarily better terms. And then the broker is like, you're unpredictable, and sometimes you give me great product, but sometimes you give me shitty product. There's somebody else out here who's not doing any of the stuff you're doing, and they're always cheap. Because the problem is that for you to be able to, so you need a couple of things to happen to be able to leverage great underwriting to win in the marketplace. One is that you need rational competition. If there's somebody out there that is always really, really cheap, then from a broker perspective, they are a lot more predictable and a lot easier to work with than somebody like you who takes a lot of, takes their time and tries to figure it out. The second part is you need capital partners who allow you to be selectively aggressive, right? And oftentimes what you find is that when capital is loose, then so are so is your competition.
Mhm.
Because when distribution companies get access to loose underwriting guidelines, they tend to overheat and compete too much. And so, the real magic is, and it took us a while to figure it out. The real magic is that historically in insurance, the trade-off was between speed and depth of underwriting. You had to choose one, because doing more underwriting work meant that it would be slower, it would take more time, it would be more complicated, it would create more friction for the broker and the customer. And our ability to actually get much more data through our scans, but then also to provide a result a lot faster than competition. Even though our competition isn't collecting all this data, they're actually taking longer than we are. So, you collect 100x more data points, but then you make a decision in 11 seconds from start to finish. So the collection, the analysis, the results, and the binding, the whole thing takes under 30 seconds. That was the magic, because we could achieve better speeds and better underwriting by leveraging technology. And that's something that I didn't really understand before we started. And one thing that's really great about competing by having better, faster service is that, as far as the broker is concerned, if you're slow, you better be cheap. What it means is that if you can compete on service, you don't have to compete on price. And so you don't have to get pushed to a position where your only way of winning is to lower prices and therefore jeopardize your underwriting results and your loss ratios. And I think that that's just really key for, especially when you work in kind of SMB and mid-market spaces, the ability to achieve effectiveness and speeding up the process means that you can do a really good job on service levels, and you don't have to compromise your pricing.
Your depth of knowledge and of cybersecurity sort of reminds me of the old adage in insurance that claims people tend to make terrible underwriters, because when you've seen the back end of it, you wouldn't underwrite anything, and it's getting
100%.
Yeah,
when we started, our security team wouldn't want to sell insurance to anybody.
No,
because everybody was like, they found something wrong with everybody, and it was a real learning process for us to say, like, okay, obviously the lowest loss ratio is not selling a single policy. You're never going to have a claim, but can we find a price in which this is profitable? And training on also, by the way, training everybody, both the underwriters and the security people, to only concentrate on the things that actually drive meaningful losses. Instead, because in security, oftentimes, because you have no idea where money actually gets lost, you tend to talk about everything. You also try to portray yourself as an expert. So you build best practices and frameworks with like just so many dashboards, and it's just so convoluted and nobody can follow, and you lose your audience. Where with an insurance company, if it's important, then show me how that changes the policy. Either price has changed, or the sublimit, or the retention, or you're even not willing to sell it to me, right? And if you're not really changing your price or your terms, it means it's not important, or at least, so actually using the insurance policy as the ultimate, testament of whether this thing matters or not, I think is a really important kind of focusing and enforcing function for our security team and our underwriters.
Interesting. I'm conscious of our time, and I want to sort of move towards the future, because I think you got such momentum in the business. Want to talk about kind of what's next for you, and like what are you excited about for the future of your business, and maybe more broadly the industry.
Yeah. So from the when I was in security, the thing that frustrated me the most was that the technology company that build your technology stack don't take any responsibility over their role in the failures of your security. I'll use a quick example. Imagine you bought a car for your business because you needed to drive around, and you drive around, and then suddenly your brakes fail, and when you survive the crash, you learn that the brake manufacturer posted on their blog site, on their blog post, that they have a critical vulnerability in their brakes that you needed to patch yourself. And so they're not going to call you up. They're not going to recall the car. They're not going to fix the brakes themselves. And they are definitely not going to be liable for any damages that happen to you because the brakes failed.
Yeah.
And so now you need to be up to speed on their blog. Now imagine you had 50 different vendors of parts in your car, and each one was going to break twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
All you wanted was a car. I mean, you're a small business owner. You just want to drive to work. Now you need to have a full-time mechanic reading blogs of these different vendors, patching and fixing systems on a weekly basis to make sure that the car doesn't crash. And by the way, this is where my metaphor breaks a little bit. Also, in cyber insurance, as a small business owner, you're up against the Chinese army, the Russian mafia. Like, these are big, scary, highly resourced, very sophisticated attackers. There is no military. There is no FBI. There's no police. It's a wild west. You're on your own, and on the internet, you are next door neighbor with every criminal on the planet. And like, that stuff is like, we're just asking so much from small businesses. And what I like about insurance is that insurance has always played the role of market standard setter. I mean, I can bet that on your ceiling you have a smoke detector right now, and it's probably not because you are passionate about smoke detection technology and its effectiveness against fires, or that the specific brand of the smoke alarm is one that you just really kind of buy into what they do. It's probably because the insurance company forces whoever built your apartment to or your house to have it installed. And so the insurance company ends up figuring out what matters and then using its policy to force certain things to be adopted, right? Seatbelts became a law after the insurance companies mandated that they wouldn't sell insurance unless there was a seatbelt. Same thing is going to happen in security. There are all these vendors running around promising a bunch of stuff. Nobody knows what matters. There are a bunch of IT companies who build porous, fragile technology stacks that keep breaking with absolutely no accountability to what they're building. And you know what? Today, just to give you one example, if you have a Microsoft Exchange email server, we find that you have 125% more likely to have a breach. And so we don't, we tell you, either you move to Google or you go to Office 365, or we're going to double your premium. And so now Microsoft needs to decide whether it wants to be the product that causes you to double your premiums, or maybe they want to do something about it. I just love the opportunity that we have to learn and to set standards, to use our policy, to just push the world towards a better place. To me, that's where, to be able to do that, you need to be a credible insurance company. You need to show that what you're doing actually works. So our ability to build and grow an insurance company, to show that what we're doing actually drives down ransomware loss. The fact that we've been able to save hundreds of businesses from having a ransomware, like, that stuff is, to me, is amazing. But then on the more personal kind of company side, we touched on this a little bit earlier. I mean, for me, the exciting part is I feel like we're building a really special company. I really do. We have amazing people. We have good people that are, we have like this no asshole rule. I mean, there's just, you have to be good at your job, but you also have to be a really good person. And I feel like we're building kind of a company that is just, I don't know, it's just inspiring in terms of the talent, the people, the way they treat each other, the way they work together. I'm just super pumped about like that part. Like, it's just really, it's probably the proudest I've been in anything I've ever done in my life. Just seeing kind of these people come together and what they can build together. That stuff, if we can grow this and help push this to be kind of the new standard in our industry, to me, that would be kind of the dream.
What a wonderful place to bring it to a close. I think that's such a nice thing to hear, because using insurance as a force for good is definitely something that we hear, but actually kind of the mechanics of that, I obviously then immediately got nervous about what email server I'm using. I think it's 365. I think I'll be okay. But yeah, no, I think absolutely that, you can get lost in the numbers and the hype of, venture capital backed businesses, and actually like stripping it back to, being a no arsehole rule company that's a good place to be and learn and develop is something we should all aspire to. So thank you so much for being a guest. I'm really glad we got to do this. This is a lot of fun. And I just really appreciate your time. So thanks for being so kind to being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.